Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICFF Youth Indigenous Film Series webinar. My name is Natalie Quercha, and I will be your guide throughout today's discussion. I would like to begin by introducing someone and welcoming someone very important to this event, and that is Superintendent of Education, Equity, Diversity, and Indigenous Education, Derek Chen. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you so much, Natalie. So pleased to be here today. We are so proud to be partnering with the ICFF for a 10th consecutive year for the International Contemporary Film Festival Youth Series. This is the second year that the focus will be on an Indigenous film series. One of the top priorities of the Toronto Catholic District School Board with regard to equity and diversity is combating anti-indigeneity and the expansion of Indigenous education from kindergarten to grade 12. This film, that series, is one of the many initiatives that support this vision. And you need only look at the number of students that are registered for one or more of the films, as well as today's webinar and panel, to see that teachers and students share this vision. We have over 3,000 students registered for the film festival, and over 800 signed up for today's webinar. Many of you watching through your teacher's Zoom account. We look forward to learning more today from those who created the film Kayak to Klemtu, and to hear voices from the Indigenous community. We hope you enjoy today's webinar and panel, and that you will make a commitment to continuing your learning and your journey towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Once again, Natalie, thank you so much for the invitation with the ICFF, Italian Contemporary Film Festival. So proud to be partners with you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you so much, really. And we definitely agree. It's an incredible turnout today to have over 800 students online with us. And with that being said, it's now my pleasure to introduce the director of the ICFF Youth Film Festival, which is Joseph Kafiso.
Hello, everyone. And as director of the ICFF Youth Festival, I'm extremely happy to be here with you today as we celebrate the 9th edition of our festival and explore a key topic in Canada's history and an important part, obviously, of your education. ICFF Youth is a 2-week-long international film festival that uses cinema to teach you about a variety of cultures and languages, as well as the art of filmmaking. This year, due to COVID restrictions, we've taken an online approach to the festival, which is why we're all here on Zoom all together. Now, this year's Indigenous series, it's called ICFF Youth Indigenous Film Series. The program features 4 Indigenous films and made by Indigenous people. They focus on the study of Indigenous culture, whether it be through traditions, art, beliefs, music, nature. And we're able to learn these values through the art form of cinema. Today's film focus is the multi-award winning Canadian drama Kayak to Klemtu, directed by Zoe Leigh Hopkins. The film was filmed in British Columbia, in Klemtu, of the Great Bear Rainforest of the Kitasoo and Sheshe lands. It's an adventure of a lifetime that reflects on the importance of protecting our lands for future generations. I'll leave this now to Natalie.
So I'm very pleased to now introduce someone whose career is dedicated to protecting the environment of British Columbia and who sent us a special message today. Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy for BC, George Heyman. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm George Heyman, BC's Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, and it's such an honor to bring greetings to this year's International Youth Film Festival. Film, the arts in general, are a gateway to seeing our culture, to understanding the world in which we live. And this year, honoring the film Kayak to Klemtu as part of the Indigenous series is so important to us in British Columbia, because the Great Bear Rainforest is a model for how we can put biodiversity at the center of our decisions about how we interact with our landscape and how we manage our forests. It means so much to all of us. I hope this is a tremendous experience for you. Thank you.
Now, students, it's time to begin session 1 of today's webinar called Filming in the Outdoors. The 5 elements of film are very important to consider when making a movie. They are plot, sound, lighting, acting, and today's focus, which is cinematography. Almost all of the scenes in the movie are filmed outside within the Great Bear Rainforest. Now, shooting a film outdoors is very difficult, as you're up against something that can't be controlled, which is the weather. There are many things to consider, like lighting, which means, is it bright enough for the scene? Or maybe sound, as the wind can affect the actor's audio as they speak. When we spoke to the director of the film, she mentioned the challenges of filming outdoors. So let's see what Zoe Hopkins has to say.
Were there any difficulties filming outdoors? Because most of the film is filmed out in nature. And I know some of those scenes when the weather was really bad, it must have been a little difficult to get on camera.
We actually had the opposite problem. There was some weather related trouble, that I'd written into the script. And you'd think that in a rainforest, on the ocean, we'd get rain at some point, and it never rained. So we had to make rain.
Thank you, Zoe. That was interesting indeed. Now, here's someone who can tell you all about how they were able to overcome these outdoor challenges. We have a cinematographer of Kayak to Klemtu, Vince Arvidsson. Now, Vince's work was featured around the world and winning numerous awards, airing on Discovery Channel, MTV, and TCN. And so I'm pleased to announce that Vince is with us live today. Welcome, Vince.
Hi there.
Hi, this is Joseph. How are you?
I'm good. And how about you?
I'm good. So my first question to you will be, when we were interviewing the actor Evan Adams and the director Zoe Leigh Hopkins, both mentioned some of the challenges of filming outdoors. Do you have any opinions about those particular challenges?
On a project like Kayak Klemtu, especially from a cinematography perspective, it's like being out there in nature is like the best gift and also the biggest challenge, because it's everything. It's your set every single day. And the upside of that is on the BC coast it's beautiful most ways you look. The challenge is like, how do you shape it to tell a story that seems to progress, creating different looks and different feels. And, we had this incredible weather generally where it was blue sky and not windy every single day, but it's supposed to be, we don't want it to look like a holiday video. We want it to look like it's a challenge. And so we had to pray for a cloudy day, and we actually only got one. And that cloudy day we used to turn into the big rainstorm and all of those other things.
You had to create or bring in rain. Can you tell us how that process works? Like how it's done?
Usually, like when you're closer to a big city, you bring in a big tanker truck, like a water truck, and hook a pump up to it, and you spray water from the truck down on from big towers. The challenge here is we were in a really remote place. Bringing that tanker truck across 2 ferries would have been too expensive for us, and so we actually had to put the hose into the ocean and pump salt water back up and rain salt water down onto the cast, and then also be very careful with the equipment, because of course salt water will damage equipment it touches. So that was an added challenge. But basically it's only raining that tiny little corridor in that shot. 2 feet to the side, it's completely dry.
Right. Can you think of a moment in filming that was very challenging due to the conditions you were in?
I mean, one time we decided on a place we're going to film a beach, and they pull out, and it's a big scene, and there's a lot of dialogue, and they're all talking. And at that time, the beach is up here, the tide is high, and so the actors are right at the water, and it's kind of a rocky shoreline. And we set it all up, and by the time people have we've done our blocking and come back from makeup, the tide has dropped, and keeps dropping. And by the time we've finished, it's exposed, this rocky beach that's about this steep, And so the kayaks wouldn't stay put. They just started sliding down this beach and thinking, oh man, how is anyone going to believe this is all happened at the same time? You know, you go from them sitting like this to now they're sitting like this. And then and spontaneously during the takes would just slip and slide into the ocean. We have to go get them and bring them back up. But, you know, it's remarkably enough, it still works. So.
That is amazing. It will be quite a challenge. Usually a complex process to work with the sun to get the correct shot. Is there any particular type of decision you have to make to achieve what you want to achieve?
Yeah, it's definitely, because the sun is non-negotiable. It will set when it sets. There's no asking if you can have another 30 minutes. It's a piece of like, well, which scenes warrant the most beautiful light? Because the most beautiful light will be at sunrise or sunset. Zoe and I would use Google Earth or maps to figure out the orientation of all the beaches and figure out then based on the time of day, which beach we would use because it would have the right angle to the sun. You have to work with the sun and make the most of what it gives you.
Absolutely. Many of these scenes were filmed out on the water. How did you capture those shots? So were you on a boat nearby or? So
we wanted to feel like we were there on the journey. So to get that kind of grand scope of where we are and yet still feel like we're there in the boats, we had to be in a boat. I mean, I don't know if anyone had any photos to show you, but it was a ridiculous enterprise because we would have a little tiny fishing, you know, dory kind of thing, like one of those little aluminum boats. Yeah.
Quite a challenge. Okay, lastly, it must have been so incredible to film in the Great Bear Rainforest. Tell us about your experience.
I would encourage everyone to go out to these places. Like they're incredible. It's what made all the hard work worth it. The Great Bear Rainforest is amazing and worth saving, and I think as we have an obligation to save because it's not ours.
Well, thank you very much, Vince, and this has been most interesting.
Thanks for showing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Vince, for joining us today. Thanks so much for a wonderful dialogue that we had. So now, students, how is rain created on set? Well, this is a very important decision to make when filming, as planning around the weather is very unpredictable. And most cinematographers choose to either create rain on set or add it later on post-production. Big movie productions with large budgets often create rain by using rain trucks. A more affordable and commonly used option is a rain rig, which is made up of long pipes that stand on tall poles with attached sprinkler heads. Let's see it in action.
Have you ever wondered how they create rain in films? Well, I'm here with Artem to find out. Okay, so the first thing I noticed when I came around this area is this donut looking thing. What is it? Talk me through it.
Donut looking thing.
That's what I thought.
So when somebody phones us, usually what they'll say is, can we have a rain machine? Which we laugh at, because there isn't such a thing.
Yeah.
The first question is where you're going to get the water from. And if you can, you get it from a fire hydrant, but sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere. So then you go back to the second option, something like this, where you put down a big collapsible tank.
So right now they're pumping the water from that donut thing, the water tank. If you look at the puddle on the floor, it looks so real. It
sucks the water out, it pumps it down the hose to a manifold, and then from the manifold you control the various rain stands. It's a mixture of the pressure and the nozzles you use, so you can have a light sort of misty drizzle, or you can have really heavy droplets.
Yeah, my favourite kind. I'm having a great time right now. One of the things Mike told me is to get the rain stands as high as possible so that the raindrops actually come out in straight lines.
Don't, for instance, put a stand either side of the camera so the rain's crossing. That's a real giveaway. Yeah. So if you can look out for that and sprinkler system.
Stop! I've got the power right now.
How amazing is that? Incredible special effects, obviously done, man-made, and certainly impressive. So at this point, we have concluded session 1, and I hope you learned something that about filmmaking and how movies are made. Thank you very much. Now to you, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was an incredible session about filmmaking in the outdoors. Now it's time to begin session 2, and it's my pleasure to introduce ICFF Youth Curator, Leigh Biglands, who will be leading you through this discussion. Welcome, Leigh.
Hello, Natalie, and thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Leigh Biglands, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm very excited to introduce a special section of today's presentation called BCs Environment Up Close. Located on the Pacific coast of British Columbia is the beautiful Great Bear Rainforest, which is the largest coastal temperate rainforest on Earth. This is a land where wildlife includes some of the largest species and some of the smallest organisms on the planet, such as spirit bears and rich salmon streams. In the rainforest, there are massive trees that frequently exceed 1,000 years old and can attain heights from 60 to 70 meters. The forest absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. An acre of mature trees can absorb in 1 year the same amount of carbon dioxide produced when a car is driven 42,000 kilometers. The rainforest is monitored by Indigenous guardians annually, and today we are going to focus on the Kitasoo and Hehais people that live in that territory. This native group resides in Klemtu, in the heart of the Great Bear Rainforest. Their vision for the land and resource is based on the best definition of the term sustainable. They live to conserve the wealth of forests, fish, and wildlife forever. They think that this is the way we will all be here forever. They strongly believe that it is incredibly important to protect and enhance their culture and their heritage. Now let's talk about their history, economy, and climate. The Kitasoo Hehais settled in the Klemtu area thousands of years ago due to the abundance of sea kelp in the bay. Today, their economy is based mainly on resources, particularly ecotourism through the Spirit Bear Lodge, fish farms, hatcheries and processing, and timber harvesting. The town is surrounded by the ancient forests, deep oceans, and coastal fjords that make this part of the world internationally famous for its natural beauty. In 2016, the Great Bear Rainforest Agreement was instated, which secures the future of the rainforest and protects it while still ensuring economic opportunities and employment for local First Nations. The Kitasoo Hehais territory is about 50% protected because of this agreement. Part of the economic development of this territory is due to the world-famous Spirit Bear Lodge. Located in the heart of the rainforest, Spirit Bear Lodge offers world-class wildlife tours and Indigenous cultural experiences where guests get to live aspects of an ancient culture, view spectacular wildlife, stunning landscapes, and even reconnect with nature. And here with us today is Troy Robinson, who is a guide and social media mentor for Spirit Bear Lodge. After living in Vancouver for 10 years, he returned to his hometown of Klemtu, aspiring to reconnect with his roots and to learn his traditional language and the stories of his people.
Hello.
Hi, Troy. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Could you start off by telling us a little bit of your role at the Spirit Bear Lodge?
I'm actually one of the tour guides. I'm slowly making my way up to lead guide.
So the Spirit Bear Lodge is Indigenous owned. Your family must have come up with a name, Spirit Bear Lodge. What does the Spirit Bear symbolize for the Indigenous people of your nation?
For our nation, it actually comes up to this the story we have of the raven. The raven is actually going around to the bears. He went up to a brown bear and he asked if he can make every 10th bear a white bear to remind us of the Ice Age from back then. Grizzly replied, would this affect me in any way of my hunting or of my health? And the raven said no. And so the grizzly replied to him saying, not agreeing with wanting to do that. And so after that, the raven went to the black bear and asked the same thing, asked if he was able to make every 10th bear a white bear. And so he agreed, and he said, yes, okay, I'll make I'll make every 10th bear a white bear. That's how the spirit became Spirit Bear.
That's so interesting. I love it. What is this, the mission of the Spirit Bear Lodge?
The mission is to employ most of our communities. We're in a really secluded town and there's not much employment here. And so the lodge actually, there's a big deal of employment for the community.
What role do the elders play in your life?
The elders, they're all my knowledge holders. They're the ones that, if I have a question, they're the ones I go to if I want more of a better perspective. They influence my life in where I can grow with my culture and learn more knowledge. And
I'm sure those are all great lessons. Yeah. I know you talked about the youth performance group that you're part of, the SUA. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
And so can you tell us more about that group?
It's a youth group which we actually take guests to go to our big house, and the SUA program actually shows them a few dances, helps us youth, some of us youth that didn't have the opportunity to learn our language, to how to introduce ourselves and make regalia, like we were learning language, and as well as our songs. And that's how I learned to introduce myself, and that's when I started wanting to get more into our language. Back before I moved home, SUA is named SUA because the youth in my hometown wanted to be known as loud and proud of our culture.
Oh, nice.
And so SUA in our language, which means thunder.
Has the Great Bear rainforest been affected by the rains and the floods and the forest fires also that BC has been devastated by? Yeah.
It has actually a bit in some areas. Like we actually had a very deep fall of salmon in some rivers. There's been a couple times where some of our rivers that didn't have fish coming back. It really affected the bears, and where you're able to see in how small they were.
That changes everything. The whole cycle of life, I guess, is affected by that, right?
Oh yeah. It's like the trees and like everything. Like the salmon actually do like a huge job for the forest here. Like how the bears grab it and they take it out of the river up into the bush when they go eat, and once they leave it, it actually gives food to the trees and it helps all of them, and it just makes it so green. That's what made it so green.
Can you share like your most touching experience that you've had in the rainforest?
I think one of my favorite memories was I gotta say 3 years in a row we actually had what we call the whale party. We went there this one day and there's actually over 50 plus humpbacks in this one little inlet. Like that's all you've seen was like all these like different blows all over around you. It was amazing to see and experience. Like that was my first time actually ever being close up to a humpback with the motor off and everything.
You're giving me goosebumps, actually. It sounds so beautiful. Thank you so much, Troy. This has been so enjoyable.
Yeah, and thank you all for having me.
Wasn't that great? So nice to get the perspective of a young Indigenous person who actually lives in Klemtu and the rainforest. The Spirit Bear Lodge believes in responsible tourism and the conservation of the environment. In the film Kayak to Klemtu, we see the same determination to protect the environment as Ella, the main character, tries to stop a pipeline from crossing their land. We want to take this opportunity to honor the lead actress of the film, Takaya Blaney, who is also a famous activist and singer-songwriter. Since the age of 10, she has spoken at rallies, conferences, festivals, and even a TED Talk all around the world. She also presented a speech to the United Nations at their climate change conference and has won countless awards. Let's take a look at this video that showcases some of these incredible moments.
I believe in our ability to transform. I believe in our ability to outlive and to survive. I don't believe in the power of colonial systems to transform.
Our generation is undoubtedly drunk on oil. It's It's as if we consume more oil than water. Truth is, the more we mine for oil, the more we destroy and intoxicate our most valuable resources.
Our ancestors survived many apocalypses. And when we talk about this climate apocalypse, you know, we're gonna survive it too, but it's gonna come from the people.
What a remarkable person, truly inspirational. Students, continue watching films such as Kayak to Klemtu and have conversations to address these important issues. Protecting the environment isn't only the responsibility of Indigenous people. It is everyone's responsibility. This is our Earth, and we must work together to protect it. Thanks so much for listening to Session 2, everyone.
Thank you so much, Leigh, for presenting Session 2 of today's webinar. Students, following this section, we will begin our Q&A for questions. If you have a question during the discussion, please write it down and hand it to your teacher. Your teacher will then type the question into our Q&A chat, and we will do our very best to answer as many questions as possible. So today's final session is focused on the film Kayak to Klemtu and its important themes. It's my pleasure to introduce the TCDSB panel of Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders, starting with Superintendent of Education, Equity, Diversity, and Indigenous Education, Derek Chen. Indigenous Education Resource Teacher, Frank Pio. Diane Montre, Métis Knowledge Keeper, TCDSB. Clayton Shirt, First Nations Elder, TCDSB. And Wendy Agnew, Justice of the Peace for the Ontario Court of Justice. What a wonderful panel of speakers that we have with us today. And I now leave the floor to Derek Chen, who will be leading this panel discussion. Welcome back, Derek.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And it's such an honor to be here with these esteemed colleagues. And I do want to actually first start off with the land acknowledgement, which in fact, the members of the panel here today, many of them wrote together for our board. So just in recognition of that, many of you may have heard it this morning at your schools, but we will once again say the land acknowledgement. Out of our deep respect for Indigenous peoples in Canada, we acknowledge that all Toronto Catholic District School Board properties are situated upon traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge the land covered by Treaty 13 is held by the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Toronto is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Covenant. We also recognize the contributions and enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples in Ontario and the rest of Canada. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, our panel today. Really excited to explore some of the themes. It was really fascinating, I have to say, learning a little bit about the technical pieces of the film about the rain, how to create the rain, but also listening to that young man talk from Klemtu. That was incredible. So ICFF, hats off to you for being able to speak to someone from Klemtu, as well as, of course, the filmmakers. So today we are going to be talking. I have a few questions for our panel. And so what we'll do is I will ask the questions and then I'll give everyone a chance to respond. So the first question I have is really just a simple one, is what did you enjoy about the film and what struck you the most on the film? And we'll start with, I'll take turns in terms of rotating, but we'll start with Elder Clayton Shirt.
I watched it. I actually watched it twice because I rewatched it, and I really like the message behind it. It's a story of and it's the message what it's saying about the environment, and I really enjoyed that. And it's like somebody was saying earlier, it's not just us, it's everyone, it's all of us as human beings. It's up to us to do this. So it's a very simple message, but it's a very profound message at the same time. And that's what I enjoyed about the film, and the scenery. and all of that. So, miigwech, thank you.
Thanks, Clayton. I agree. The scenery was absolutely gorgeous, and that message was powerful. So, knowledge keeper Diane Montreuil.
Annie, bonjour everyone. Thank you so much, Derek. I think for me, I'm like Clayton, the beauty of the land, the nice reflection also that as Indigenous, the duty and the responsibility to protect the land in its beauty, in its natural way, because if none of us just try to bring back people together, we're going to be in rude awakening eventually. And the beauty of our young people coming back to the traditional way, talking to the community, for me, has made a huge impact, because for me, it shows there's hope coming for the future. That's what triggered me very much for that movie, that film.
Thanks so much, Diane. That message of hope is so important. And we'll have former TCDSB administrator and current Justice of the Peace, Wendy Agnew.
Good morning, everyone. I think what I enjoyed most about the film was my own learning. I didn't know that there was a rainforest in Canada before I watched the film. You know, I was aware of BC and its rich biodiversity and all that, but I didn't actually know that we had a rainforest in Canada. So curious as to how many students didn't know that there was a rainforest. I'm sure I'm not alone. And I also thought that what I really liked about the film was that it was a strong female protagonist, and that they really didn't water down, you know, the rebellion and the typical stereotypical teenage decision-making process, and that the fact that sometimes teenagers are impulsive and then their parents have to bail them out, but the message was solid. So I really liked the film.
I also didn't know there was a rainforest, and I forgot to mention about that actress. It was just incredible when I was reading up about that actress. As you mentioned, Wendy, in the film, she was an advocate, and but in real life, she is a very, very strong advocate, a young woman, very young woman to do that. So hopefully that inspires many of you to go out and kind of follow in those footsteps. So now we'll have a lead teacher for Indigenous education, Frank Pio.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Derek. What I liked about the film was the fact that it tied in with the environment, a rite of passage of youth, of how it's so important that environment becomes part of this rite of passage, of how they discover themselves is through their environment. And it's something for us to think about, particularly the young people like yourselves, is how you deal with the world through your environment and the importance of the environment in your lives. And also, like Wendy and Derek, I also didn't know about the rainforest. There was a rainforest in BC, but I felt it was a really clear message of how to navigate and never give up and make yourself see what you should do in your lives. But it was a good film. Thank you.
So speaking of the rainforest, and you know, our panel already talked about the environment, and so let's go into that a little bit more. The movie explored Indigenous people's relationship with nature and the environment. So I'm wondering if you could explain this deep connection with nature, and what can non-Indigenous people learn from this relationship with nature? We'll start with Diane this time.
Well, you know, for us Indigenous, we're connected because we are following sometimes a lot of the teachings from our elders. And there's time in the spring or in the fall time that we go, some of us call that fasting, and some of us call that maybe vision quest. So it is something that is asked by our elders to go in the forest and to really try to understand what is our roadmap in life and our connection with nature. And you know, people that know Indigenous culture, they know that we're custodian, and we have a duty and a responsibility to connect with the land, because and the gift that have been asked to us is to be respectful and to be loving for every part of the environment, every part of nature, animals, water, bear, wolf, birds, and people. So we have that responsibility. And sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to really understand what our journey is about. So I'll let the pleasure to other people to share their experience also.
I think just that, you know, different Indigenous communities have different relationships with the environment, but kind of what is central to most is that we're interdependent, right? And that we're not superior above the environment, right? It isn't ours for the taking, it's ours to use.
We see that Ella kayaked all the way to Klemtu, took her several days along with her family and friends to protest the oil tanker traffic. So knowing that this is a human being issue, and knowing that we are all human beings in it together, we shouldn't just sort of rely on certain people who are, attached to the issue. What ways can our students get involved in civic action? And not just with regard to this, obviously, but in general. And how can our schools be allies with Indigenous communities? So I'm going to start this time with Wendy.
I think there's a few things. I mean, we're not all going to kayak to Klemtu, right? We're not all that large in terms of our ability to take on initiatives or challenges, or really maybe not all that interested in doing something so grand. And quite frankly, it's outside of the wheelhouse for most people, but everybody can do something, right? And as Clay said, it's up to you, right? You're the future. From an Indigenous perspective, we look at 7 generations, right? And the environment isn't something that belongs to us, it's something we borrow from the future. You'll often hear that said. That's not necessarily a solely Indigenous model, but you'll often hear people say that the environment isn't ours alone, or the earth isn't ours alone. It's something we borrow from our grandchildren. And that's so true. So the things you can do to get involved, you can write to your member of parliament, you can write to your member of provincial parliament, you can write to Mark Miller, he's the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations. You can, as schools, you can do that, as classes, you can do that. You can join a protest if you think that there's something that's interesting that you would like to protest about in a respectful way. I think that you need to be informed. So current events are hugely important. One of the dangers that I feel we face as a society is with streaming services. We have Netflix, and we have Crave, and we have Prime, and all these services, but we don't actually really watch the news anymore, right? We can record the shows that we want to watch and fast forward over anything that we don't want to see. But we've done away with newspaper print in large part and moved just to reading the news online. And so what you're exposed to really is what you want to hear and what you want to see and what you want to listen to, where you're not necessarily getting a broad perspective of the things that are going on in society. So I would encourage you to read the local papers, find out what's going on in your communities, and get involved. There are, just as the actress who plays Ella is involved in climate initiatives in her community and in Canada. We also, I'm sure you're all familiar with Greta Thunberg, who again did something very grand, and she's a large scale environmentalist, but find out who the Ontario environmentalists are. We have Autumn Pelche. She's huge in water protection and in ensuring that Indigenous communities have access to clean drinking water. And she's your age, she'd be about 14, 15 years old. So find out who the people are and how, reach out to them and find out how you can support them.
I love that you mentioned her age too, Wendy, because it goes to show you that it's never too young, like already 14 and even probably younger, we see advocates out there. And so those of you who are in elementary school, so grade 7 and 8, it's not too young. Like, you can get started on this, So Frank, on to you.
Just to tag in, I think one thing it's important. I agree with the grand scale of what a school or students should do, but I really think it's important that you should know who your community is. It's very, very important to know if you're particularly, let's say our board is in the Toronto District School Board. So our vicinity of organizations you could get involved with and what their issues are is the Toronto Council Fire or the Toronto Native Center. So I would recommend the schools and classes connect with them and see what their issues are, and start not like small, but it's really important to understand who you're really working with. I understand the idea of a grand scale, but I think one of the drawbacks is that I'm wondering if you really know who your community is, and it's important to know who you're working with and try to start from there. And I think it would be help you to understand better what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. I'm just wary of the time as well. I know we have about probably 10 minutes left because we started a tiny little bit late. So if we go till about 11:03, we've got about 10 minutes. And I just wanted to be fair to ask one of the questions here in our Q&A. So if you don't mind, Clay and Diane, I'll just go over to this question. Do you think that living in the environment or on traditional land is the best way to learn about a specific culture? I don't know if one of you or both of you want to jump in on that one.
You don't have to, but you could collaborate with people in the area to have a better understanding. And sometimes they have circles that invite non-Indigenous to understand and learn about the way we think. And, you know, I think every place you could pitch in to contribute. And you know what I have learned myself is to volunteer, and teamwork and become ally, and everything has left many impact in communities, because you want the same kind of things to protect the land. And as Wendy and Frank has said, I don't want to re-say anything, but just contribute, volunteer. You will receive so much by giving. Understand the culture by going in their circle and everything, and you will learn a lot of how people from one community to the other could have different way to look at thing and think. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks so much, Diane. And it's interesting, we had a bit of a chat on Monday about, you know, there's obviously hundreds of different First Nations out there, and so you wouldn't know about every single one out there. But so this question maybe relates to that a little bit, and I'm wondering, Clay, if you'd be able to answer this one. Do all Indigenous cultures include the aspect of nature in their traditions?
Absolutely. I would just say this, as Indigenous, I'll use that word Indigenous, we all have an understanding of the earth. We all see the earth as the mother, as the first mother of all mothers, father sky, grandfather sun, grandma moon, the universe, the creator, the great mystery, right? And that's universal from coast to coast. And again, culture grows from environment. So the rituals, the ceremonies, all of those things grow from the environment. So I am a Ojibwe in Cree. I am a Plains Cree and Ojibwe. So I'm from this place called the Great Lakes of Ontario, right? The Great Lakes. And those people in the West Coast, I really don't know anything about their ceremonies, right? But I do know this: we never quarreled over these things, right? We understood this. And so absolutely, it's all about the land, right? It's all about our relationship to our mother, the earth, right? And I know it's challenging this is how I was raised to see this, and not everyone sees the earth as the mother. The majority of human beings don't, but I'm just saying this is how the Indigenous see our mother, right? The earth. So it's another point of view, and I think it's so important to look at that and just say, okay, I don't see it that way, but I can understand it, and maybe I need to look at that a little more and try to understand a little better. And I'll just sort of echo the last question about getting involved. And I know this, people, when they hear this, they want to get involved, they see this and they want to do something, and they're kind of shy. And I know young people are shy, but I just say this to them. It's like, look, to be an ally, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to ask some questions and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because you want to ask questions, right? You want to question everything. But also, what do you do when you make a mistake, right? You apologize, right? You say you're sorry, right? And then you try not to make that mistake again, right? So asking those questions about whatever you want to help with, that's okay. You're going to make a lot of mistakes when you're coming into an Indigenous community, right? And so that's important. Just remember that. And what do? You apologize, right? You say, I'm sorry. And then I don't know this. Thank you for telling me this. I know now all this. So I think that's important. And I just want to just say that to the youth who are watching, who want to get involved in the community, right? Whatever community, whatever you want to do about environment, all of that, it's up to you. It's so important. And again, it's alternative energies, right? I'll just say this about alternative energies. The first alternative energy is you, right? Called your mind, your intelligence, right? It's the gift, right? And you can, and just think about these things and think about all the things that, the past and what we have done to the earth, and this, which she talks about this pipeline going through the community and all of this. And it's just our addictions to fossil fuel, right? So we need to understand that. We need to look at that and this dependency we have on this. We can't sustain this for much longer. The science knows this, right? The writing is on the wall, right? So to speak. And so we need to look at these things and alternative energies. The first one is our minds, right? That Creator has given us, right? That God has given us, this gift called our lives and our intelligence. Right? To think of new things, so I encourage the youth to think of things that we go beyond what we give them permission to think about, right? To come up with those solutions. I have no idea what they are. And I think most adults don't have any solutions to alternative energies, but I'm looking towards the youth and I'm saying, yes, you have the answers because you will explore this. You will understand this, what it is to create something that we can't figure out, right? And I think that's very important for the youth. And so question all of these things. And like the North here, we are like the North Canada is the northern lungs of the world, right? We know about the South, right? And so the trees are very important, and without them we can't breathe, right? So it's so important to think about all these things. And I know the youth will come up with solutions because I have faith in them, no matter who they are. It doesn't matter about race, gender, class, any of those. It's all, we're all in this together, right? And it's very important as human beings. So I just say that, and that's what this film sort of points at, right? So it's a very powerful film. Go back to the film. It sort of points in that direction in a very kind way. So I'll just say that. Miigwech.
Thanks for that, Clay. Beautifully said. We have time for one last question, I think. And I'm going to combine a bit of the questions. So if I'm going to ask each of the panelists to maybe keep your answer to about 30 seconds or so. And I know it's going to be tough because it's a kind of a big question, but we talked a little bit about and combining it with this one question in the Q&A as well, where a student has asked, how do we continue Indigenous learning outside of school? I also want to combine that with the question of, looking at truth and reconciliation. Truth and reconciliation has been paired up. In our school system, we always seem to be talking about truth and reconciliation as it pertains to residential schools and the tragedy around residential schools, but it's more than that. It's way, way more than that. So looking at truth and reconciliation, how can students and schools move towards truth and reconciliation? And how can we continue our learning outside of school? So I'll go to each of you for those final words. And we'll start with Wendy.
I think reconciliation is about action, right? If you think of it in a Catholic context, when you have received the sacrament of reconciliation and you confess your sins, you are given actions to complete. And while reconciliation in an Indigenous, in this truth and reconciliation context is different, it does require action, right? And it requires people doing things. It's not just enough to say, we understand what happened to the Indigenous people. We understand the cultural genocide. That's just a piece of it, right? It's how we move forward. So I encourage you to educate yourselves, to continue learning, and to work to be allies with Indigenous people.
Thanks for that, Wendy. Going to Diane next.
I think Truth and Reconciliation for me was the start of planting a seed. Now it's our responsibility to make it to grow stronger all together. And it's also, as Wendy has mentioned, is inviting you for action to make a change all together and build relationship. So if you have to invite people from different community to learn about different things, please do so, because there's a lot of stuff in curriculum that might not be accurate. So if you would like to have a different lens, is to really work together for a better life, all together as one people. Thank you.
I love that piece, Diana, about the relationships. Frank?
For me, as I kind of alluded to throughout topics that I've talked about, is really about truth and reconciliation is about community, is understanding your community, understanding the Indigenous community. I think all of you as youth, it's important that you put yourself out there and learn about the Indigenous community. As Wendy said, do your research, do some searching about what is actually a First Nation, what is Métis, what is Inuit, and you have all the knowledge around you, and it's there for the taking, particularly if you start conversations with elders. But Truth and Reconciliation is really about community, and that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and lucky we've got those relationships here connected with elders. We have an elder in residence program here, and knowledge keeper in residence program. So with Diane and Elder Clay. Clay, you get the last word for today.
Well, I'll try. I can't. I'll try. I think just reconciliation is really, if you're going to reconcile, what does it mean to me? Wendy, a point of view, a Christian point of view of reconciliation. To me, reconciliation is, the definition is just friendly relations. So I would just say to encourage the youth to reconcile. We constantly reconcile and try to reconcile, because there's clearly a disconnection to the earth. All right. Start with that. All right. Just think about that, about the earth, how you see it, reconcile with the earth again. By being, an Indigenous thought. I'll just say that I talk to a lot of young people. Indigenous thought is those 3 R's, right? Recycle, reduce, reuse. That is Indigenous thinking, right? That's how we always saw the world, right? That's how we always saw things. So you're getting it, right? And it's only in the first generation or two now that these have been applied into this dominant culture, right? So that's a start, right? So you're reconciling already when you do those 3 things, right? And you're finding your relationship to the earth again, finding that connection, right? Like I said, do what you can, right? And so I just encourage you guys that's how I see reconciliation. Start with that, right? So be good to all of you.
Thank you so much, Clay. If you, just to summarize, listen to the messages here, the simplicity of the messages too. Taking action, relationship, community, and understanding and being one with nature and the earth. So simple. We can absolutely do those things. I want to pass it on. Thank you so much to our wonderful panel today. And once again, thank you to ICFF. Pass it back to Natalie.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you. And thank you to our panel for those incredible contributions to the discussion. And also a big thank you to our students for your questions that were answered today. I now invite back Joseph Cafiso, Director of Youth, and Derek once again for some final remarks and a goodbye before we sign off this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you to everybody. And I want to thank in particular Derek as a superintendent, as a leader of this team from TCDSB. And of course, I want to thank the board for once again a great partnership, and we hope once again to repeat this in following years. So we will be having a festival in February to celebrate Black History Month. So once again, we will be collaborating to offer to students and teachers something different, something hopefully exciting to all. And of course, I want to thank the students and teachers for participating. You're an important part of this, and we acknowledge your presence and by saying a big thank you. So once again, see you soon, and thanks to everybody. And I want to thank my team as well, who has really put in a lot of work, a lot of time in ensuring that this is a wonderful success. Thank you.
I know Joseph kindly called me the leader of this team. I am not the leader, they're the leaders. So I'm just a facilitator and trying to center Indigenous voices, and come February, well, and continuing to center marginalized voices. So thank you so much to the ICFF team for giving us this platform. We really appreciate the partnership and look forward to continuing this good work that I think we're doing together. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Derek and Joseph, and everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. This now concludes today's webinar. We hope you learned something new and were inspired by the speakers' presentations that you heard today. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.